It was one of those picturesque summer evenings in 2015 when the golden light of the setting sun washed over the quiet suburbs of New York. The streets, lined with manicured lawns and picket fences, seemed almost abandoned except for the occasional chirping of crickets. The air was thick with the scent of freshly cut grass and the faint aroma of backyard barbecues wafting from distant houses. Nathan, a 20-year-old black man with broad shoulders and a quiet determination in his eyes, was pedaling home on his battered old bicycle. The bike, held together by duct tape and sheer will, groaned under his weight as he navigated the cracked asphalt. His worn-out sneakers barely clung to the pedals, and his hands, calloused from years of hard work, gripped the handlebars firmly. Nathan had just finished a grueling shift at the local grocery store, where he stocked shelves and carried heavy boxes to make ends meet. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was honest. Every dollar he earned was a step closer to his dream of one day attending college and becoming an engineer, a dream that often felt impossibly distant. His family couldn't afford to send him to college, but Nathan refused to let that stop him. Every spare moment not spent working or helping his parents was dedicated to poring over textbooks he'd borrowed from the library. As he rounded a corner onto a deserted street, the quiet was broken by a sight that instantly drew his attention. A gleaming black Range Rover sat motionless on the side of the road, its hazard lights blinking in rhythmic defiance of the evening calm. Even from a distance, Nathan could see that one of its tires was completely flat, the rubber slumped against the pavement like a defeated boxer. Next to the SUV stood a young woman, pacing nervously. She was dressed in a crisp white blouse and tailored navy slacks, her blonde hair cascading over her shoulders like a golden waterfall. Her polished appearance contrasted sharply with her anxious expression as she stared down at her phone, clearly unsure of what to do. Nathan slowed his bike and pulled over, leaning it carefully against a lamppost. He wiped the sweat from his brow with the back of his hand and approached her cautiously. His voice was calm and polite as he called out, "Ma'am, do you need some help?" The woman turned to him, startled at first but quickly relaxing when she saw his friendly demeanor. She hesitated for a moment, glancing between him and the car, before offering a small, almost embarrassed smile. "Honestly, yes. I could really use some help. I've never changed a tire before, and I was just about to call someone, but—" Her voice trailed off as she looked back at the car. Nathan stepped closer, his eyes briefly scanning the vehicle. Even without getting too close, he could tell it was a brand new Range Rover, sleek, spotless, and probably worth more than he'd make in a decade. The thought crossed his mind that whoever owned a car like this could easily afford roadside assistance. But as he looked at the woman's flustered expression, he decided it didn't matter. She was clearly out of her depth, and helping people was just the kind of thing Nathan believed in. "It's no trouble at all," he said, offering a reassuring smile. "Just give me a few minutes and I'll have it fixed." The woman visibly relaxed at his words. "Thank you," she said, her voice soft but genuinely grateful. "I didn't know what I was going to do. My phone battery's dying, and I didn't want to leave the car here." As Nathan walked over to the SUV, he caught a glimpse of her designer shoes and immaculate manicure. She wasn't someone he'd expect to see standing by the side of the road in a situation like this. Still, he didn't press for details. Nathan wasn't one to judge people based on appearances. "Do you have a spare tire in the trunk?" he asked, crouching to inspect the flat. "I think so," she replied, opening the back of the SUV. She rummaged around for a moment before producing the spare tire and a jack, both of which looked completely unused. Nathan chuckled lightly. "Brand new, huh? Don't worry. I'll show you how it's done." He got to work quickly, loosening the lug nuts with a steady rhythm. As he did, the woman stood nearby, watching him intently. After a few minutes of silence, she spoke up. "Thank you again. I know you didn't have to stop." Nathan looked up briefly, brushing a smudge of dirt from his cheek. "It's nothing, really. My mum always says you should help people when you can. Besides, I've had my fair share of flat tires on this old bike," he added with a grin, nodding toward his beat-up bicycle. She laughed softly at his comment, and for a moment, the tension eased. "I'm Tiffany, by the way," she said, holding out a hand. "Nathan," he replied, shaking her hand briefly before returning to the tire. "Nice to meet you, Tiffany." As he continued working, Tiffany asked him more questions. "So, Nathan, are you from around here?" "Yeah," he said. "Born and raised. Still living with my folks. I work at the grocery store in town. It's nothing fancy, but it pays the bills." "Do you go to school?" Nathan paused for a moment, tightening the jack. "Not right now," he admitted. "I'd like to, though. I want to study engineering. Always been good with my hands, and I've loved building things since I was a kid. But college is expensive, and my family's got enough on their plate as it is." Tiffany nodded, her expression thoughtful. "That's really admirable. It sounds like you've got a good head on your shoulders." Nathan shrugged modestly. "I just take it one day at a time." The conversation flowed easily as Nathan worked. Tiffany was impressed by his calm demeanor and the genuine kindness that radiated from him. Nathan, meanwhile, found her surprisingly down-to-earth, despite her polished exterior. As Nathan finished securing the spare tire, he stood and dusted off his hands. "There you go, all set." As Nathan worked to replace the flat tire, the rhythmic clinking of metal tools against the pavement filled the otherwise quiet evening air. The sound was calming in a way, almost meditative, as he focused on loosening the lug nuts with practiced ease. Tiffany stood nearby, arms folded across her chest, watching him with a mixture of curiosity and gratitude. She hadn't expected anyone to stop and help her, much less a stranger who seemed so willing to lend a hand without hesitation. After a moment, she broke the silence, her voice soft but carrying a genuine interest. "Do you do this often? Stop and help people, I mean." Nathan glanced up at her with a small grin, sweat glistening on his brow. "Not really, but I've been in enough tight spots myself to know how much it means when someone offers a hand. So when I saw you out here, I figured, why not?" Tiffany smiled at his answer, sensing that there was more to this young man than met the eye. "That's really kind of you," she said, shifting her weight from one foot to the other. After a brief pause, she added, "Do you live around here?" "Yeah, not too far," Nathan replied, his voice steady as he focused on his work. "I grew up here, still live with my parents. My dad's not in great health, so I try to stick close to home and help out where I can." Tiffany tilted her head slightly, intrigued by the openness in his tone. "What happened to your dad?" Nathan straightened up for a moment, wiping his hands on his worn jeans before answering. "He was a mechanic, one of the best in town, but a couple of years ago he got hurt pretty bad on the job, slipped a disc in his back, and it's been downhill since then. He can't work anymore, so my mum's been picking up the slack. She's a housekeeper, works long hours just to keep things afloat." As Nathan spoke, there was no trace of bitterness in his voice, just a quiet resilience that struck Tiffany deeply. She didn't know what to say at first, so she simply nodded, letting him continue. "It's been tough," Nathan admitted, crouching back down to tighten the lug nuts on the spare tire. "But I'm grateful for what we do have. My folks taught me to always keep pushing forward, no matter how hard it gets." There was a pause before Tiffany asked, almost hesitantly, "What about you? What do you want to do? I mean, beyond helping your family." Nathan's expression softened, and for a moment, his eyes seemed to light up. "I've always wanted to be an engineer," he said, his voice tinged with a mix of hope and uncertainty. "Ever since I was a kid, I've loved building things, taking stuff apart, figuring out how it works, and putting it back together. I even built my own bike when I was 12. It's kind of a dream of mine to work on big projects one day, maybe even design something that could really help people." "That's incredible," Tiffany said, genuinely impressed. "So, are you in school for that?" Nathan shook his head, his smile fading slightly. "Not yet. College is expensive, and we just don't have the money for it right now. I'm saving up, though, working as much as I can, and I've been looking into scholarships. It's slow going, but I'll get there eventually." Tiffany couldn't help but admire his determination. Despite everything he was facing, Nathan spoke about his dreams as if they were within reach, even if the path to them was unclear. She felt a pang of guilt as she thought about how easily she had been able to pursue her own goals, thanks to her family's wealth and connections. "You know," she said after a moment, "not everyone would keep going like you have. Most people would have given up by now." Nathan glanced up at her, his hands busy securing the spare tire. "Maybe," he said with a shrug. "But giving up doesn't really solve anything, does it? I figure as long as I keep moving forward, there's always a chance something good will happen. And even if it doesn't, at least I can say I tried." Tiffany was silent for a moment, struck by the quiet strength in his words. She wasn't used to meeting people like Nathan, people who didn't let their circumstances define them, who carried their struggles with such grace and dignity. By the time Nathan finished replacing the tire, the sky had deepened into shades of purple and gold, the last rays of sunlight slipping below the horizon. He stood up, brushing the dirt from his hands and stepping back to admire his work. "All set," he said, flashing her a quick smile. "You should be good to go now." Tiffany exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. "Thank you so much," she said, reaching into her purse. "Let me at least pay you for your time." Nathan raised a hand, shaking his head firmly. "That's not necessary," he said. "But—" Tiffany started, only for Nathan to cut her off with a kind but resolute tone. "I didn't do this for money," he said. "I just believe in helping people when I can. Kindness doesn't come with a price tag." His words left Tiffany momentarily speechless. She had never met anyone like him, someone who seemed so selfless, so genuine. In her world, where everything often felt transactional, Nathan's perspective was both refreshing and humbling. As she tucked her wallet back into her purse, she found herself wondering what she could possibly do to repay him, not for changing the tire, but for reminding her that true kindness still existed. "Thank you," she said again, her voice quieter this time. "Not just for the tire, but for everything." Nathan shrugged modestly, picking up the tools he had used and placing them back in the trunk. "It's no big deal," he said. "Just paying it forward, you know." Tiffany smiled, but her mind was already racing. There was something special about this young man, something that made her want to help him, just as he had helped her. "Take care of yourself, Nathan," she said as she climbed back into the driver's seat. "You too, Tiffany," he replied, giving her a friendly wave as she started the engine. As Tiffany drove away, the image of Nathan standing by the side of the road, his bike propped up against the lamppost, stayed with her. She knew this wouldn't be the last time she thought about him, or the last time their paths would cross. That evening, the Trump family's penthouse apartment in Manhattan shimmered with its usual grandeur. The sprawling living room was bathed in the warm glow of golden chandeliers, and the city lights outside glittered like a sea of stars. Tiffany Trump sat on one of the plush white sofas, her designer heels kicked off and her blonde hair tied back into a loose ponytail. She had been quiet during dinner, her mind replaying the events of the day over and over again. As the dishes were cleared and the house grew quieter, Tiffany decided it was time to share the story that had been weighing on her. She found her father, Donald Trump, seated in his study, surrounded by towering shelves of books and framed accolades. He was reviewing papers with his characteristic intensity, the faint hum of the city filling the room as background noise. "Dad," Tiffany said, stepping into the room and catching his attention. Trump looked up from his work, his sharp blue eyes softening slightly at the sight of his youngest daughter. "What's on your mind, Tiff?" he asked, setting the papers aside and leaning back in his chair. Tiffany sat down across from him, her expression earnest. "I want to tell you about something that happened today. Actually, someone I met." Trump raised an eyebrow, intrigued. He gestured for her to continue. "You know how I was out running errands earlier?" she began, and he nodded. "Well, my car got a flat tire, I was stuck on the side of the road and I had no idea what to do. I was about to call for help when this guy stopped to help me." Trump frowned slightly, a protective edge creeping into his tone. "A guy stopped? Was he bothering you?" No, Tiffany said quickly, shaking her head. "He wasn't like that. His name was Nathan. He was riding this old beat-up bike, and when he saw me, he offered to help. He didn't ask for anything. He just started changing the tire for me. And while he worked, we talked. Dad, this guy, he's something else." Trump's curiosity was piqued. "What do you mean?" Tiffany leaned forward, her voice gaining momentum as she recounted the conversation. "He told me about his life. His dad used to be a mechanic, but he got injured and can't work anymore. His mom works as a housekeeper, and Nathan's been working at a grocery store to help support his family. He wants to go to college and become an engineer, but they can't afford it. Even with all that, he's so optimistic. He said he believes in helping people, even when things are hard for him." Trump listened intently, his expression thoughtful. Tiffany rarely spoke with such conviction about anyone, and it was clear this young man had left a strong impression on her. "What did you do?" he asked finally. Tiffany hesitated. "I offered him money. I thought it was the least I could do after he helped me. But he wouldn't take it. He said he didn't do it for the money. That kindness doesn't come with a price tag." For a moment, the room was silent, save for the distant hum of traffic outside. Trump leaned back in his chair, his hands folded in front of him, his eyes focused on Tiffany as he considered her words. "This Nathan," he said slowly. "He sounds like a good kid, the kind of person who doesn't let life beat him down. That's rare these days." Tiffany nodded eagerly. "That's exactly it. He's so genuine, Dad. I feel like we should do something for him. He's doing everything he can to make something of himself, but he needs a break." Trump didn't respond right away. He reached for a glass of water on his desk, taking a thoughtful sip as he weighed her words. Tiffany knew her father well enough to recognize the wheels turning in his mind. He wasn't someone who made decisions lightly, but once he did, he followed through with relentless determination. "What do you think we should do for him?" Tiffany asked, breaking the silence. Trump set the glass down and looked at her, his expression firm but kind. "The world needs more young people like him," he said. "If you want to help, let's make it happen." Tiffany's face lit up. "You mean it?" Trump nodded. "Of course, but if we're going to do this, we're going to do it right. This isn't about charity. It's about giving someone the tools they need to succeed. I'll have my team track him down tomorrow. Let's find out what he needs and go from there." Tiffany felt a rush of gratitude and excitement. "Thank you, Dad. I know he's going to appreciate this more than you can imagine." Trump smiled faintly. "You did the right thing bringing this to me. Sometimes, the smallest acts of kindness can make the biggest difference. Let's see if we can be a part of that for Nathan." As Tiffany left the study, she felt a sense of pride in her father. Beneath his reputation for toughness and business savvy was a man who understood the value of lifting others up. And as she prepared for bed that night, she couldn't help but wonder how Nathan would react when he found out what was coming his way. It was a typical morning at the small grocery store where Nathan worked. The soft buzz of fluorescent lights mixed with the hum of freezers in the background as he restocked cans of soup on an old, slightly creaky shelf. Nathan's worn sneakers scuffed against the tiled floor as he moved with a steady rhythm, his thoughts preoccupied with another long day ahead. The work was simple but necessary, and he approached it with the same quiet determination that he brought to everything in life. Outside, the sun was high in the sky, casting its bright rays over Nathan's modest neighborhood. The streets were lined with small, weathered homes, each with its own unique charm. It was a community where everyone knew each other, and life moved at a comfortable, predictable pace. But today, that quiet predictability was about to be shattered. Around noon, the rumble of powerful engines broke the usual stillness of the street. A convoy of sleek black luxury cars pulled up outside Nathan's house, their polished surfaces gleaming under the sun. The convoy included several limousines, an SUV, and a car with tinted windows that exuded an air of importance. Neighbors, drawn by the unusual commotion, began to step out onto their porches and lawns. They whispered among themselves, trying to guess what was happening. Children paused their games of tag to stare wide-eyed at the procession of cars. A few bold onlookers even moved closer, their curiosity getting the better of them. "What's going on over there?" Mrs. Henderson, the elderly lady next door, asked her husband, clutching her floral housecoat. "I've got no idea," Mr. Henderson replied, his hands on his hips as he squinted at the scene. "Looks like some kind of big-shot visitor." As the luxury vehicles parked in a neat line, uniformed drivers stepped out and opened the doors with precision. A tall man in a sharp suit emerged from the lead limousine, scanning the surroundings as if ensuring everything was in order. Then, the door of the largest limousine opened, and none other than Donald Trump stepped out. The neighbors gasped in unison. "Is that Donald Trump?" one young man asked incredulously, pulling out his phone to capture the moment. Meanwhile, Nathan, oblivious to the spectacle unfolding at his house, was finishing up his shift at the store. He grabbed his bike from its usual spot behind the building and started pedaling home. His mind wandered to the stack of library books waiting for him, most of them about engineering, a subject he never tired of learning about, even after long days of work. As he turned onto his street, he noticed the unusual crowd gathered near his home. His brows furrowed in confusion, and he slowed his bike. Then he saw the cars. Then the man standing near his front yard. Nathan's heart skipped a beat. It couldn't be... could it? As he drew closer, the crowd parted slightly, their eyes fixed on him. Donald Trump, standing tall and confident, spotted Nathan and stepped forward with a firm but friendly smile. Nathan skidded to a stop, his bike wobbling slightly as he planted his feet on the ground. His jaw dropped. "Is this for real?" Nathan muttered under his breath. Trump extended a hand toward him, his gold cufflinks catching the sunlight. "Nathan, it's great to meet you," he said warmly. "Tiffany told me all about you." Nathan's voice caught in his throat. You're Donald Trump," he stammered, his wide eyes darting between Trump and the fleet of luxury cars behind him. Trump chuckled, his handshake firm and confident. "That's right," he said, his tone both commanding and reassuring. "And I'm here today because I heard what you did for my daughter. She told me about how you stopped to help her when she needed it the most. That kind of kindness and selflessness. It's not something you see every day." Nathan's hands trembled slightly as he released the handshake. I didn't think it was a big deal. She needed help, so I helped." "And that's exactly why I'm here," Trump said, his voice growing more serious. "People like you, people who go out of their way to do the right thing, even when they don't have to, deserve to be recognized, and more importantly, they deserve a chance to succeed." Nathan didn't know what to say. His mind raced as Trump reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a crisp white envelope. "This," Trump said, holding the envelope out to Nathan, "is a full scholarship to any college you choose. Engineering, business, medicine, whatever you want to study. You've got the drive, Nathan. All you need is the opportunity." Nathan stared at the envelope, his hands hesitating to take it. "A scholarship," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "That's right," Trump said with a nod. "Tiffany and I talked it over, and we decided this is the least we can do for someone as extraordinary as you. But that's not all." Nathan's eyes widened even further. "There's more?" Trump gestured to one of the black SUVs parked nearby. "This is for you, too," he said. The crowd gasped as a driver opened the door to reveal a brand new car, its sleek frame glinting in the sunlight. "For me?" Nathan asked, his voice breaking with emotion. "For you," Trump confirmed. "You've got places to go, Nathan. This will help you get there a little faster. No more pedaling that old bike of yours." Nathan's knees felt weak as he tried to process everything. The scholarship, the car, The fact that Donald Trump was standing in front of him, recognizing him for something he had done without expecting anything in return. Tears welled up in his eyes as he finally took the envelope, clutching it tightly in his hands. I don't know what to say," he choked out. "Thank you. Thank you so much." Trump placed a hand on Nathan's shoulder, his expression sincere. "You earned this, Nathan. You showed my daughter that there's still goodness in the world, and I know you'll go on to do great things. Just promise me one thing. When you're in a position to help someone else, pay it forward." Nathan nodded, unable to speak, as the crowd erupted into applause. Tears of joy streamed down Nathan's face as he stood in his small front yard, surrounded by his family. His mother held the scholarship letter in her trembling hands, reading and rereading it as if she couldn't quite believe it was real. His father, who rarely showed much emotion, gripped Nathan's shoulder tightly, his eyes glistening with pride. For a moment, time seemed to stand still as they embraced, united in the overwhelming realization that their lives were about to change forever. For Nathan, it felt like waking up from a dream, one where all his hard work, struggles, and quiet determination had finally paid off in the most extraordinary way. He could hardly process the whirlwind of events that had unfolded in just a matter of hours. Yesterday, he was stocking shelves at the grocery store, unsure if he'd ever be able to afford college. Today, he held in his hands a scholarship that promised to open doors he had only dared to imagine. That evening, as the excitement settled and the neighbors returned to their homes, Nathan sat with his parents at their worn kitchen table. The scholarship packet was spread out before them, alongside a brand new laptop Trump's team had delivered. Nathan's mother ran her fingers over the sleek device, marveling at how far they had come from the days when they struggled to afford even basic necessities. "Nathan," his mother said, her voice thick with emotion, "this is your chance to make something of yourself, to build the future you've always dreamed of. Don't let anything hold you back." "I won't, Mom," Nathan promised, his voice steady despite the lump in his throat. "I'll make you proud." With the scholarship covering all his expenses, Nathan was soon packing his belongings for college, a prestigious university he had only ever seen in brochures. The first day he arrived on campus was a blur of excitement and awe. The sprawling grounds, the towering academic buildings, and the hum of students bustling between classes. It was a world completely different from the small-town life he had known. Nathan threw himself into his studies with the same work ethic that had carried him through his toughest times. He quickly gained a reputation among his professors and peers as someone who was not only brilliant but also humble and hard-working. While many students struggled to adjust to the rigors of college life, Nathan thrived. He spent long hours in the library, devouring books on engineering and designing innovative projects in the campus lab. But it wasn't all work and no play. Nathan formed close friendships with classmates who shared his passion for learning and making a difference. On weekends, they would brainstorm ideas for solving real-world problems, from building more efficient solar panels to designing low-cost water purification systems for underserved communities. Nathan's enthusiasm was infectious, and his determination inspired those around him to think bigger. One night, as he worked late in the lab, his phone buzzed with a text from Ivanka Trump. She had stayed in touch with Nathan, checking in occasionally to see how he was doing. "How's the engineering superstar?" Nathan smiled as he replied, still figuring things out, but getting closer every day. Her response came almost immediately. "I never doubted you for a second. Keep going. You're going to change the world someday." Nathan stared at the message for a moment, his resolve strengthening. He wasn't just working for himself anymore. He wanted to honor everyone who had believed in him, from his family to Tiffany and her father. Their faith in him fueled his desire to give back. After 4 years of relentless hard work, Nathan graduated at the top of his class. The ceremony was a blur of applause, handshakes, and tears as he walked across the stage to receive his degree. His parents were in the audience, beaming with pride, and Tiffany had even flown in to celebrate the occasion. But for Nathan, the diploma wasn't just a symbol of his academic achievements, it was a ticket to make a real difference in the world. He landed a job at a leading engineering firm, where he quickly made a name for himself as a problem solver and innovator. His first major project was designing affordable housing structures that could withstand natural disasters, inspired by the stories of families who had lost everything to hurricanes and floods. The project was a success, earning him recognition and even a few awards. Still, Nathan felt a pull to do more. He couldn't forget where he had come from or the challenges he had faced growing up. He wanted to make sure other young people with big dreams wouldn't have to struggle the way he had. Using his earnings and connections, Nathan founded a non-profit organization dedicated to helping underprivileged youth gain access to education and opportunities. The initiative provided scholarships, mentorship programs, and resources for students who showed potential but lacked the means to pursue their goals. Nathan personally mentored many of the students, sharing his story and encouraging them to believe in themselves. One of his favorite moments came during a visit to a local high school, where he spoke to a group of wide-eyed teenagers. "You don't have to have it all figured out," he told them, "but don't let where you are now define where you can go. I'm proof that even the smallest acts of kindness can lead to something incredible. So be kind, work hard, and never stop dreaming." Nathan's story began to spread, shared in newspapers, TV interviews, and even online forums. People from all walks of life were inspired by his journey, from the day he stopped to help a stranger with a flat tire to the day he became a successful engineer and philanthropist. Journalists often asked him if he ever imagined his life would turn out this way. Nathan's answer was always the same: never. But I've learned that when you lead with kindness, you open the door for amazing things to happen, not just for yourself, but for others. That's what matters most. His non-profit grew rapidly, reaching thousands of students across the country. Many of them went on to achieve remarkable success, crediting Nathan as their inspiration. They too began paying it forward, creating a ripple effect of kindness that spread far and wide. Nathan stayed humble through it all, never forgetting the moment that changed his life, the day he stopped to help someone in need, not knowing that it would set off a chain of events he couldn't have imagined. This story wasn't just about Nathan's journey, it was a testament to the transformative power of kindness and humility. It showed how one selfless act could set off a chain reaction of positive change, reaching far beyond what anyone might have imagined. What began as a simple gesture of helping a stranger with a flat tire evolved into a life-altering experience, not just for Nathan, but for everyone touched by his story. Nathan's journey reminds us of a universal truth. Every small act of generosity, no matter how insignificant it might seem in the moment, carries the potential to spark miracles. It's the kind of ripple effect that turns a single moment of compassion into a wave of kindness that can transform lives. His story became a beacon of hope for people across the world, a reminder that even in times of struggle, there is always room for kindness. It proved that true generosity doesn't require wealth or fame. It simply requires a willingness to care, to show up for others, and to believe that a better world is possible. Nathan's non-profit initiative, which started with just a handful of scholarships, grew into a nationwide movement, helping thousands of students find their footing and pursue their dreams. And each time someone asked him about the key to his success, his answer was always the same. It started with one small act of kindness. That's all it took to change my life. But Nathan never claimed the credit for what he had accomplished. He would always point back to his parents, to Tiffany, and even to the countless people who had believed in him along the way. "No one gets here alone," he often said. "Kindness is a team effort, and it's up to all of us to keep it going." As Nathan's story spread, it became a call to action for others. People began to reflect on their own lives, asking themselves how they could contribute to the same ripple effect. His journey reminded the world that miracles don't just happen on their own, They happen when we plant seeds of kindness, nurture them with humility, and watch as they grow into something extraordinary. In a world that often feels divided, Nathan's example became a unifying force. It reminded people that despite our differences, we all have the power to make someone else's life a little brighter. Whether it's lending a helping hand, sharing a kind word, or simply being present for someone in need, these moments of compassion are what truly define us. As you think about Nathan's story, ask yourself, what small act of kindness can I offer today? Who in my life might need encouragement, support, or simply a smile? Remember, it doesn't take much to start a ripple, just the willingness to care. And as Nathan's life has shown, when you give selflessly, the rewards often come in ways you never expect. They might not always be tangible, but they are always meaningful. So go out into the world and plant your own seeds of kindness. You never know whose life you might change, or how your own life might be changed in return. Here's to a world where kindness reigns, miracles abound, and we all do our part to make the world a little better than we found it. May your acts of kindness inspire others, and may you always find joy in lifting others up. Here's to believing in miracles and creating them. Nathan's story is a powerful reminder that kindness can change the world, one small act at a time. If this story touched your heart, inspired you, or made you think about how a single moment of compassion can ripple out into something extraordinary, let's keep that ripple going. Like this story? Let us know. Your likes aren't just a thumbs up, they're a way to spread this message of hope and humanity to others who might need to hear it. Subscribe for more stories like this. By subscribing, you're not just staying connected, you're joining a community of people who believe in the power of kindness, humility, and making a difference. Together, we can share more stories that uplift, inspire, and remind us all what it means to truly care for one another. Share your thoughts below. Have you experienced or witnessed an act of kindness that changed someone's life? Or maybe you've been inspired to do something kind today. We'd love to hear your story, because every story matters. Spread the word. Share this post with your friends, family, or anyone who could use a little reminder that miracles happen every day. Let's create a chain reaction of positivity, one share at a time. Remember, every like, share, and comment isn't just an action, it's a step toward building a kinder, more connected world. So go ahead, hit that like button, subscribe, and let's keep this beautiful journey alive. Together, we're more than a community. We're a movement. Let's make kindness go viral. Thank you for being here. Thank you for believing in miracles. And thank you for choosing to be part of the ripple effect. Now it's your turn to be someone's miracle. Like, subscribe, share, and most importantly, be kind.